When people think of Korea and drama, they picture K-dramas, romance, betrayal, power struggles. But long before the cameras rolled, the streets of Korea were already writing scripts of their own. Tonight, we're diving into the real underworld story, the rise of Korean gangs, their political ties, brutal turf wars, and how they evolved into modern organized crime networks. This is the true crime history of Korean gangs, based on documented events, court records, historical accounts, and law enforcement investigations. The colonial underworld, 1910 to 1945. When Korea was annexed by the Empire of Japan in 1910, the country entered a period of intense political control and economic exploitation. In cities like Seoul and the busy port of Busan, the rapid social changes created fertile ground for criminal networks. Dock workers, smugglers, gambling operators, and protection rackets began forming loose street organizations. Japanese organized crime groups, particularly the Yakuza, operated across the peninsula during the occupation, influencing local criminal structures. Some Korean gang members cooperated with Japanese syndicates, while others clashed with them. One well-known figure from this era was Kim Do-han, who became notorious in 1930s Seoul for leading street gangs that reportedly fought against Japanese-affiliated groups. After Korea's liberation in 1945, he later transitioned into politics. His life illustrated an early and powerful pattern in Korean gang history, the overlap between criminal influence and political ambition. The underworld during colonial Korea was not just about crime. It was tied to nationalism, survival, and shifting power dynamics in a society under foreign control. Post-war chaos and political gangs, 1950s to 1960s. Liberation did not bring stability. The Korean War from 1950 to 1953 devastated the peninsula, leaving South Korea economically shattered. Cities were in ruins, poverty was widespread, and state institutions were fragile. In this environment, street gangs expanded rapidly. During the presidency of Syngman Rhee, there were documented instances in which gang members were allegedly used as political enforcers. They were hired to intimidate opposition figures and disrupt protests. Crime groups became entangled with political power, blurring the line between organized crime and state authority. So when we say the real Korean drama, we're not talking about scripted rivalries or slow-motion fight scenes under neon lights. We're talking about a century-long story shaped by occupation, war, political power, economic explosion, and digital transformation. The history of gangs in Korea is not just about crime. It is about how power operates in the shadows when a nation is struggling, rebuilding, or rapidly evolving. From the colonial streets of Seoul under Japanese rule, where early gangs formed amid repression and resistance, to the chaos of post-war poverty where criminal groups intertwined with politics, the underworld has always reflected the condition of society. In the industrial boom of the 1970s and 1980s, organized syndicates rose alongside skyscrapers and shipping ports. When South Korea became a global powerhouse, criminal networks followed that globalization, adapting to new markets and new opportunities. And in the digital age, crime moved from alleyways to encrypted chat rooms, from street brawls to cyber fraud operations that cross borders in seconds. What makes this story so compelling is not just the violence or the scandals. It is the pattern. Every time Korea changed, its underworld changed with it. Every crackdown reshaped criminal structures rather than erasing them. Every new technology created new risks. The visible gang wars of the late 20th century may have faded, but organized crime did not disappear. It evolved into something quieter, more strategic, and often harder to detect. When Park Chung-hee came to power after a military coup in 1961, his administration launched aggressive crackdowns on organized crime. Thousands of suspected gang members were arrested in large-scale campaigns aimed at restoring order. These operations significantly reduced visible street violence. However, they did not eliminate the underworld. Instead, many groups reorganized, became more structured, and operated with greater secrecy. Suppression reshaped organized crime rather than destroying it. The rise of major crime syndicates, 1970s to 1990s. As South Korea industrialized rapidly in the 1970s and 1980s, economic growth created new opportunities for both legitimate business and criminal enterprise. Urban nightlife districts expanded, ports handled increasing trade, and construction boomed. Organized crime adapted to this new landscape. In Busan, the Seven Star Gang became one of the most notorious syndicates, controlling portions of the port economy, entertainment venues, and loan sharking operations. In other regions, factions such as the Yang Yun-A group and the OB faction gained influence in Seoul and the Honam area. These groups developed defined hierarchies, initiation rituals, and financial networks. Turf wars occasionally erupted, particularly in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Large-scale street fights between rival factions drew national attention and reinforced the image of organized gangs as visible forces within urban centers. During this period, Korean gangs evolved into structured syndicates with clear chains of command. Yet law enforcement capabilities were also improving. Major crackdowns in the 1990s targeted leadership figures, dismantling many of the most powerful organizations and reducing open violence in public spaces. Globalization and international links, 1990s to 2000s. By the 1990s and 2000s, South Korea had become a global economic power. Organized crime networks adapted to the country's expanding international connections. Authorities identified Korean criminal involvement in overseas gambling operations, drug trafficking, fraud schemes, and human trafficking cases. Korean networks were discovered operating in Japan, China, Southeast Asia, and parts of the United States. However, unlike larger transnational syndicates such as the Yakuza or Chinese triads, Korean groups typically operated through smaller, flexible networks rather than highly centralized global organizations. Domestically, technological advancements and strict enforcement policies significantly reduced visible gang activity. Extensive CCTV coverage, centralized policing, and tougher legal penalties made traditional street dominance far riskier. The public image of gangs fighting openly in entertainment districts began to fade. But organized crime did not disappear, it transformed. The modern era, cybercrime and the Burning Sun scandal. In the 2000s, the nature of organized crime in South Korea shifted further into financial and digital realms. Voice phishing scams became widespread, targeting ordinary citizens through coordinated fraud operations often based overseas. Illegal online gambling platforms operated through hidden servers, while cryptocurrency-related crimes entered investigative reports. One of the most significant criminal scandals of the decade centered on the Burning Sun nightclub in Seoul's Gangnam district in 2019. Investigations uncovered drug distribution, hidden camera crimes, and allegations of police corruption linked to the venue. While not a traditional gang turf war, the scandal revealed how modern criminal networks could intersect with celebrity culture, elite investors, and elements within law enforcement. The underworld had evolved from street-level power displays to influence operating behind closed doors. How Korea reduced visible gang violence. Today, South Korea does not experience large-scale public gang warfare comparable to the late 20th century. Government reports over the years have indicated a decline in recognized organized crime group membership compared to the peak periods of the 1980s and 1990s. Strong centralized policing, aggressive prosecution strategies, and widespread surveillance infrastructure have significantly limited open organized crime activity. Public brawls and large-scale turf wars are rare. However, experts consistently caution that organized crime has not vanished. Instead, it has diversified into financial crimes, online platforms, cross-border fraud operations, and more discrete forms of corruption. The reality behind the drama. Korean television often portrays gangsters as stylized figures bound by loyalty and honor. The historical reality is far more complex. The story of Korean gangs is intertwined with colonial occupation, post-war instability, political manipulation, rapid industrial growth, and digital transformation. From dockside rackets in occupied Korea to structured syndicates in industrializing cities, and finally, to cybercrime networks operating in encrypted digital spaces, organized crime in Korea has mirrored the country's dramatic transformation. The streets may be quieter today, but the history of gangs in Korea remains a powerful reflection of how crime adapts to every era of change. Today, South Korea stands as one of the safest countries in terms of public gang violence. Strong policing, surveillance systems, and strict legal frameworks have reduced open turf wars. But experts continue to monitor financial crimes, cyber fraud networks, and hidden corruption schemes. The drama has not ended. It has simply shifted behind the scenes. And that is what makes this history so important. It reminds us that crime is never frozen in one era. It adapts to politics, to economics, to culture, and to technology. The real Korean drama is not just about gangs. It is about resilience, transformation, and the constant tension between order and the forces that challenge it. The real Korean drama was never just about gang rivalries or headline scandals. It was about how crime adapts when a nation transforms. From colonial oppression to post-war desperation, from industrial expansion to the digital age, organized crime in Korea has shifted shape with every major chapter of the country's history. What began as dockside rackets and street factions evolved into structured syndicates and later into financial and cyber networks operating far from public view. The streets may be quieter today, but history shows that crime never truly disappears. It studies the system, finds its gaps, and reinvents itself. That is what makes true crime history so important. It helps us understand not just what happened, but why it happened, and how power, poverty, politics, and technology all intersect in the shadows. If you found this deep dive into the real history behind Korea's underworld fascinating, make sure to support the channel. Like this video so more people can discover these untold stories. Comment below and share your thoughts on which country or crime history we should explore next. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next true crime investigation. Because the most intense dramas aren't always fictional. Sometimes they're written by history itself.